much, Fright fans? Welcome to the horror show. I'm Jaime and Fuego here for your weekly worship, as I so adoringly call it. That's because you are joining me for a segment that we do every single Sunday here on the horror show that I so affectionately have called Hail to Stephen King! Damn Rizzle Man, the man that lives up to his name, at least in my estimation. And as you can tell, if you are a first-time viewer, by all of the books beside me, Stephen King is my favorite author, and about 7 years ago I decided to start going through his entire bibliography, every single thing that he has written in its respective published order, because of the fact that Stephen King has many things that all interlock and tie in together, and 2017 here is definitely one of the most exciting times to be a fan of the King. We have adaptations coming to Netflix, like 1922 and Gerald's Game, the unfilmable novel, which I'm super excited about. We've also got the Miss TV series, we have a new version of It, we've got the Dark Tower film finally coming, and we are supposed to be finally having a trailer for this It film. Now, there was actually some exciting, well, it wasn't like a ton of news about it, but there's going to be a feature in Empire magazine, which is a British pop culture entertainment magazine that is super dope, and we got our first image, guys, I'm sure you saw, of Pennywise basically peering out of the sewer and looking at Georgie, and it looked legitimately creepy, as you can see, you know, by the photo that I've overlaid right here. It is legit. So this is me actually just doing a little bit of a different format, I guess. I was going to talk just a little bit of King news and just briefly run through it, because I want feedback from you guys, you know. I want questions, I want comments, I just need that bit of response. Do you think it would be cool, besides answering one viewer question a week and then making that kind of the central, I guess, featured subject matter, how about a little bit of King news if there is King news that week? Because besides that photo of Pennywise down in the sewers, there was also the cool announcement that, yeah, the first time ever we are getting the Dead Zone audiobook, and Simon & Schuster has been doing most of King's stuff for a while as far as the audiobooks and stuff go, and they're all very well done. I actually, just to let you guys know, what I enjoy doing is when I'm working on a Stephen King book, when I'm reading it and making all my notes and, you know, all of that stuff, I really like also having a audio version so that I can read, and, you know, I can totally immerse myself in that. But if I'm like running to the store, or if I'm, you know, doing laundry, or if I'm, you know, washing dishes, and just silly, unimportant things like that, I can just pop in the headphones and I can continue along with the journey. Now, some may think that that does not make me a purist, and this is a recent development of me actually doing this, but it allows you to get through books a lot quicker, and especially as I march to the finish line here, and I'm about to start the Bill Hodges trilogy after just doing Revival, which I really want to do a review about Revival, because damn, Revival, I think I've talked about it for the last few weeks, how much I loved it. So yeah, that's cool. And also the fact that the Dead Zone is going to be read by none other than James Franco, who did the Hulu adaptation of 11/22/63, which is fantastic. I thought that was a very well made adaptation. It was pretty damn good. You can actually, on Infuegotainment, find reviews of every single episode of that series that J.J. Abrams put together. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed 11/22/63, the book, or the TV series, I encourage all of you to jump over there and take a peek at it. And I guess Franco is also still rumored to be acting in the adaptation of Drunken Fireworks, which is I think it was an audiobook originally, or maybe just an ebook, but I have yet to read it. I'm about to, though, because it's in The Bizarre Bad Dreams, his most recent collection of short stories, and I've been basically piecing myself through those in the published order. So as I read like Revival, I was catching up on some of the earlier short stories in there and stuff. And so, but yeah, Franco reading the Dead Zone. How about that? That's kind of exciting. We also saw the passing of Bernie Wrightson this week, and that was one that just really hit me, especially since they're about to. So this is one thing I have here on my shelf that is one of my prized King possessions. Check that out. So Bernie Wrightson was a frequent collaborator of Stephen King. He did illustrations in the Fifth Dark Tower book. He also did illustrations in one of the few Cemetery Dance things that I do not personally possess, and it pisses me off, damn it. there is a book called From a Buick 8 that had some beautiful Bernie Wrightson artwork in it. The Creepshow here was actually a companion to the George Romero film, and so just the art inside is phenomenal. And Bernie Wrightson's passing, King actually took to Twitter to just, eulogize him and say how much he was going to miss him, and with good reason. There was also an announcement this week, and one of the reasons why I was looking at this in the first place, this is about to be reissued in May. So that's good that more people will actually be able to check out Bernie's beautiful artwork in this. He also did stuff like an amazing illustrated Frankenstein. He did Swamp Thing. The list goes on and on. So yeah, rest peacefully to Mr. Bernie Wrightson. And so yeah, guys, that's just a little bit of exciting information that we got this past week as I try to find a spot for this back on the shelf now. So the subject of Bernie Wrightson actually brings me to this week's question. And I choose a question every week, and if I choose your question here on Hail to Stephen King, you actually get your own, as I jump out of frame a little bit, your very own Coexist shirt. So this is our own design that we have here on the Horror Show. You can also get this on our TeePublic site. You can also get crew shirts and all kinds of other fun stuff there. But yeah, if I answer your question and I turn it into the central theme of the episode, I send you a t-shirt, which is pretty rad. The question this week is actually from a buddy of mine on Twitter, and he is a frequent viewer on the channel as well, but he is a big-time fan of Sai King. So, long days and pleasant nights to Mr. Rubber Soul 81, that's right, Rob Ursoul 81. I think I know what your true name might be, sir. But let's get this question going. And he basically says, Jaime, I'd like to know which Stephen King movie would you remake? And what would you change? Or what property that hasn't been made into a movie would you like to see done? Rubber Soul 81. Much love to you, man. Long days and pleasant nights, right? Indeed. So this got me thinking about Bernie Wrightson and a bit that he did for Sai King called Cycle the Werewolf. Now, the film is not bad, and this is actually where it's kind of tough for me to even, all the stuff that I would like to see remade, they've already remade it. Like they did a Carrie remake, even though I had mixed feelings about it. They remade The Shining. They did The Dead Zone as a television series, which I have not given proper attention to, and I've heard that they expand upon, the John Smith stuff very well. And that's actually, the Cronenberg film is fantastic. That's one of my favorite Stephen King books and adaptations. I love The Dead Zone. Children of the Corn, we know there has been all the sequels, but that is one that I normally would have said I would love to see remade, but they did that damn good remake on the Sci-Fi Channel that I've actually discussed here. Salem's Lot, they remade that, even though I hated the remake. Maybe that's one that maybe they should jump back to. They remade Maximum Overdrive, the one that King actually directed himself, But yeah, the reason that I say Cycle of the Werewolf would be good is not because the original 80s film was bad, but it was just kind of hokey and it didn't have quite as much of a scare factor as I felt like it needed to. It had one of the Coreys, I want to say Corey Haim or however the hell you pronounce that sadly deceased young actor's name, but if I'm not mistaken, Gary Busey was in it too. And there isn't really so much that I would change. I would just like to see it modernized, because there is a very, the book is cool in the fact that it goes month by month, and so each chapter is a month in the the calendar year, which is pretty dope. And the illustrations by Bernie are just beautiful. There's one for each chapter, and there's some black and white, and then there's also some color stuff, and it's just so splendidly done. But I think it could be modernized and done very well, because the twist of who actually the werewolf is really, really rad. I gotta say, it's cool, it's kind of unexpected, and that is one that I would like to see updated and modernized for the present day, maybe with some better effects, some better practical for the werewolf, perhaps, although there's always the fear that they're going to go CGI with stuff in this day and age. And so, yeah, the Silver Bullet movie, though, is definitely worth watching, and I recommend it, but Cycle of the Werewolf is one, especially since King hasn't done a lot of stuff about werewolves. I think that would be super, super cool for him to hit. But The second half of this question is one that is going to be like the true theme of this episode. And so that is, what property that hasn't been made into a movie yet would you like to see done? And this is one that it just kind of scratches my head, because just about every novel by Stephen King has been made into a movie, right? I mean, even the Bachman stuff, like, Thinner and The Running Man. I mean, I guess they didn't make The Long Walk, which is quite good, and I would like to maybe see that, and then that'd be like a consolation choice. Roadwork is interesting as well. But yeah, it's the fantasy stuff that King did, so the non-horror things that have seemed to be the toughest for him to get adapted. So the first one that I have to make mention of is this one right here, The Talisman. I adore The Talisman. The story of Jack Sawyer is, it's not really scary, but it does have scary aspects to it, and man, you can see how this is like kind of ripped. It's definitely, it's seen better days, but it's been well worn and read a few times by me. This is where King really started to explore the dimension jumping stuff that becomes paramount in The Dark Tower as the series progresses, and he even ties in the sequel to this book called Black House, if I want to say. Yes, correct. And he actually co-wrote this with Peter Straub, a buddy of his, and so, I mean, everything from everybody having a twin on the other side in the territories, and Wolf, and then his werewolf buddy that, the little Sawyer kid ends up having as a companion, and the fact that you see the wastelands before we actually, take Blaine through them in the third Dark Tower book. And so this was very just formative in King doing his world building, and it's fascinating, the fact that the kid, drinks some hooch and he's able to jump back and forth. I mean, it is very cool, and it is a fantasy book that I would love to see adapted. Now, the one that I cannot grab because it is actually currently being read by a friend of mine is another one, fantasy based, that also came out in the mid-'80s and has never been adapted. At least with The Talisman, they tried to make it into a miniseries. At least with The Talisman, they made it into at least one volume of a graphic novel, which I thought was fantastic, and I'm sad that they never really got past him first jumping to the territories and finding out that this dying queen is the twinnie of his mom and everything. God, The Talisman is so good. But about the same time, King did a book called The Eyes of the Dragon, and in this one, compared to the other one being fantasy, this is like straight up medieval fantasy. Like, we're talking, swords and sorcerers and, some of the stuff that ends up being expanded in some of Roland's backstory when you find that, him being from the line of Eld and all that. And, so The Eyes of the Dragon is basically about two kids who's, after their father dies, which one is going to be king? You think it's like the handsome, tall brother or whatever, and yet the scheming, younger, chubby brother, who has none other than Randall Flagg, yes, in just a different iteration as a sorcerer of sorts, whispering in his ear. He ends up having his brother locked up in this tower, and it's fascinating, it's fun, it's very different. I still remember reading The Eyes of the Dragon, and I was like, this doesn't even really feel like a Sai King book, but it's still so well done. If people enjoy things like The Lord of the Rings so very much, and even are clamoring for more Dungeons and Dragons films and Aragon sequels and all this different stuff, I think that there's definitely an audience for this film, and it could be so awesome. So yeah, The Eyes of the Dragon and The Talisman are the first two that I have to mention here, guys. And then another one which I will probably get some flack about, because I think it is one of King's best early, where is it? There it is. It's one of King's last great 90s novels. So this is when King was like directly tying stuff together that wasn't Dark Tower even. This is a book called Rose Madder, I don't know, I'm probably mispronouncing, I'm not sure which one it is, and this is one that has surprised me how it has never been able to be turned into a motion picture, because of the fact that, put it on the damn Lifetime Network, for God's sake. It's about a woman escaping an abusive relationship with a police officer for a husband, and while she's on the run, she buys a painting that basically turns out to be a doorway into, well, what we think is at least the same dimension as the Dark Tower, or at least a similar one. And so it deals with some Greek mythology stuff, which is very cool. You even get a character that is introduced in this book at the woman's home that, our protagonist ends up at, the group shelter of sorts. And that girl ends up being the short-haired, colored punk rocker who is in King's very next book, Desperation, which is super rad, and she actually goes from having a small role in this to having one of the main roles in Desperation. And so that was something where King was getting all Castle Rock with it without even being located in Castle Rock. And so Rose Madder, it's not full on horror, it's more so building thriller type stuff, but her cop husband, who is basically, when she decides to finally leave his abusive ass, he is on her trail, and he is a damn good villain. Well defined. The stuff where she's actually having these hallucinogenic instances when she's jumping through. This is rich for a visual adaptation, at least in my opinion. And the fact that it has never been done, this is when King was in that phase of writing as women, and some people didn't like it. I must admit, I was a little hit and miss with the Dolores Claibornes and the Miseries and the Gerald games, but this is one that I think is a crime that it has never been adapted. Rose Madder is awesome and well worth an adaptation. Yep, and the book right beside it there, Insomnia, that might be on my list, but it would have to be it's another one where Derry is the setting, just like in It, and you have a character or two show up, and there's a few connections and a few mentions and stuff like that, but Ralph Roberts, I believe his name is in Insomnia. He's the protagonist. He's an Asian guy who is experiencing insomnia after his wife dies, and it ties in very directly with the Dark Tower. You've got Crimson King mentions and stuff, and so that was another one that it's not on this list of the to make proper for me, but I can't put Rose Madder back on the shelf next to Insomnia and neglect mentioning it. So next I'm going to get to, I'm only doing 5 of these, so From a Buick 8. I already touched on this book, and it is on the lower shelf, guys, so you're going to have to bear with me as I go behind the curtain over here. Haha! Yes! Shift back to your regularly scheduled spot. And this is the one where I'm sad that I have not been able to track down at a reasonable enough price the Bernie Wrightson Deluxe Edition Illustrated that he did for Cemetery Dance, because this book, I'm not the biggest fan of Christine. If there is a killer car book that I want to see adapted for the big screen by Stephen King, it is this one. Now, if you have any idea who the Low Men are, they're they're lower level minions of the Crimson King and all the stuff that's going down in the Dark Tower books, and also ties in with the Hearts of Atlantis guys, because Brodigan, the guy who the Low Men are after, played by Anthony Hopkins in the film. Yeah, so imagine if some low men are cruising around in this crazy car, and then it just gets abandoned, and then it's taken into police impound. That's basically what this book is about, and it's told in a very interesting fashion. It's not completely linear. I think that it might need to be, perhaps, for the film, and I think that would actually work well, but this is basically a car that, its trunk and stuff, it's straight up eating people. It is possessed with a force beyond the comprehension of these officers, and it's really fascinating, all of the different incidents that happen over time whenever the vehicle is brought into play. I love From a Buick 8. It is far superior, in my opinion, as I put it back on the shelf. So, yes, From a Buick 8. I will obtain that Bernie Wrightson edition one day, and then we can do a proper review of it. But man, I would love to see this adapted into a feature, or even a little 2 or 3 part miniseries. It's got enough just time jumping, as I mentioned, where it would be very well done. And so the final, why the hell hasn't this been adapted, which is what I'm thinking I actually might call this King segment, is another more recent one, and it's also from the lower shelf. Haha! Duma Key. Duma Key is damn good. Duma Key, it incorporates aspects of the King, ghost mythos and stuff that you see so very often, but I was most intrigued by the element of the phantom limb that is explored here. So basically, the protagonist is a older gentleman who loses his arm in an accident, and he's an architect, and he's on the construction site when this horrible thing happens where he almost loses his life. and it splinters his marriage. He ends up getting divorced. He's kind of estranged from his daughter, and you know, there's all this crazy stuff going on. And so what does he end up doing? He relocates to Florida after after this accident. And it's funny because that's where King lives, and so I'm assuming that setting had something to do with this. But yeah, he starts experiencing this compulsion to paint, and the stuff that he is painting is so rich and so vivid, and he strikes up a friendship with this dude down the street on the beach, and no, not down the street, I should say. But yeah, you learn the mythology of Duma Key and the strange history there, because there's always strange histories of negative energies in these King books and stuff. But yeah, it is a richly written, and this is about the time, like with this and Cell, where I think King was really just starting to regain his footing. Under the Dome was okay, and I really liked 1122, but Duma Key is the one where, I mean, the other stuff that I would mention here, like Revival and Dr. Sleep that I've read most recently, are apparently in production to some degree, or they're at least trying to be made. But yeah, Duma Key, The Talisman, The Eyes of the Dragon, Rose Matter, and from a Buick, there are no murmurings right now about them being adapted, and they have never been adapted. So those are the ones where I say, why the hell hasn't this been made yet? If you're making Gerald's Game, for God's sake, you can make this. So I congratulate my homeboy Robosoul81. Rob, thank you so very much for the comment, man. I appreciate your diligence and your support of this program and everything the horror show. You are getting a Coexist shirt. That makes me remind all of you guys that you need to jump on here, like, comment, share this video. Share this video with the hashtag Hail to Stephen King. That's how we're going to spread the word and get more of an awesome dialogue going about this program as it rolls through. Now, I was kind of disappointed about the lack of viewership for my Wastelands review, but the more I thought about it last Sunday, it makes sense that, if you haven't read the first two Dark Tower books, you're probably not going to come out in droves to watch a video about the third Dark Tower book. So yeah, all of the forthcoming reviews from the Dark Tower that are technically Hail to Stephen King are not going to be on Sundays. They're going to continue appearing on the 19th of each month, and there's no other Sunday that happens to be the 19th. So you guys are going to get just regular King coverage from me, answering questions, and I look so much forward to all of the coming weeks and all the coming topics that we are going to be able to discuss as we inch closer to just everything I mentioned, the It film, the Dark Tower film, and so much more excitement coming from the King camp in 2017. So I extend a grande gracias y'all's way for tuning in today. I've been Jaime Fuego. You can catch me on all social media sectors, predominantly Twitter, where I spend most of my time, but I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Jaime Fuego, although we are doing a full channel relaunch in May, and it's going to be at youtube.com/Infuego team, and from there on out as we hit blockbuster season and all that. So yeah, I guess long days and pleasant nights once again, all of y'all. Thanks so very much for tuning in, and until next week when you join me once again for more talk about the King, hasta luego, amigos. I hope that it is sooner rather than later, and until that wondrous hour comes to all of us, stay scared and read Stephen King. It'll be well worth it.